Hey everyone, welcome back to another session of Build Your Business with Brittany. I'm Brittany, a real estate agent, coach, and investor, and every Thursday at 2 p.m. we gather to share tips, strategies, and insights to help you grow your business to the next level. Whether you're a brand new agent or a seasoned pro, there's something in these trainings for you. Now let's jump into this week's topic. Okay, before we jump to the next topic, I want to remind you that if you're looking for even more real estate resources like a social media content calendar or an open house roadmap, visit the link in the description below because I have just that for you. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you get more videos just like this as soon as they come out. Now let's keep going with today's training. Today, we are talking about our buyer and seller consultations. So this is going to be really key for you if you're not used to doing consultations yet. Hopefully you can get a good handle or a good start today. We're going to dive into Command a little bit and we're going to just talk about the ins and outs of it. So let's talk about where we're going. We are going to talk about setting you up for success. I want to make sure that you guys know what you're doing, that you're set up for success. I want to kind of take it big picture like we do and then break it down into the actual tactical ways to really do these consultations. Now, normally, if you guys have been with me for these kind of meetings before, we usually do them separated out. So we do a listing consultation one week, and then the next week we do a buyer's consultation or vice versa. But this week I'm grouping it together just to make sure you guys are getting it before the new year, because this is a really good time to work on things like this. So I want to make sure you guys have time to work on it, especially if you have the time available. I want you to use it because buyer consultations especially are going to be a more important thing in the new year. And the reason they're more important, they're not necessarily more important than they were before, but they're more important because for whatever reason, people weren't used to doing them. They were more used to doing a listing consultation. But now with the new changes where you have to have a BRBC signed, a buyer's rep agreement signed, this is a perfect opportunity to prove your worth and your value and what you're actually going to do for your clients. So that's why we're diving into this today. So we're going to talk about setting you up for success, then getting the appointment. Then we're going to talk about commanding your consultation. So we're going to jump into Command. I'm probably going to do one and not both just because I want to make sure that we have enough time to get through everything. But the idea is the same. It's basically once you get one, you got them both, but you'll want to create two separate listing consultations. Then we're going to talk about what it'll take to win and your bonus. So be sure to stick till the end. All right, so let's dive right in and talk about who is selling. So in this market, we have it's kind of a weird market where not tons of inventory is on the market, and yet it is still moving. There's still stuff that's happening. So who are those people that are selling? We have to understand who is selling so that we know who to go after, so we know who to have those conversations with. So first and foremost, the people who are selling, let's just explain that. Finding sellers is your first job. That is your job number one, because you always need to be looking for clients, even when you have transactions, even when you have things closing, even when you have things in escrow. Where's the next one coming from? We always have to make sure that we know what's coming next. So in this market, it's easier said than done. In this market, people are selling because they have to. They're not selling because they're getting some crazy good deal. They're not selling because some of them are selling because they're moving out of state and they feel like they have to. But those are the kind of people who are selling. They're selling because they're not trying to hold on to their property because they're moving out of state. They had a job change. There's some reason that they're selling. Back in 2020, people were selling because they wanted to take advantage of this great interest rate and buy the next house. But right now, that is not the case. And so we have to find those people who have to sell. We always want to think about the 4 Ds: death, divorce, diamonds, and diapers. We've talked about this a lot in the past couple of weeks, I feel. But remember, People in every market, you're always going to have death, divorce, diamonds, and diapers. There are always people dying, always people getting divorced, always people having babies, and always people getting married. And so you want to make sure that you are specifically looking out for that. When you hear of people in your network who are getting married, talk to them. Talk to the people around them and say, hey, are they going to be wanting to buy a house soon? If you hear about people having babies, are they going to want to change their living situation? Maybe they're living in a small condo and they want to upgrade. Maybe they're living in an apartment and they want to get into a house where they're not having their rents increase every year. So remember that death, divorce, diamonds, and diapers. Anytime you hear that, it should be keywords for you to say, this might be an area for me to get in. Now, keep in mind that a lot of times, some of these are niche areas, like death, for instance. You have a lot of probate issues, and dealing with probate is not difficult, but it's not as easy as a traditional transaction. And so anytime you have kind of like a more niche area, you want to make sure that you have a little bit of understanding in that. So maybe that's where you bring on a mentor who's done that before, or maybe that's where you bring on somebody who is an expert in that area to help you figure this out. So it's the same thing with divorce. Divorce is not just a cut and dry kind of easy peasy transaction. There are a lot of moving pieces because you're basically dealing with two clients separately on the same transaction. And so you want to make sure that you have a really good understanding of how to do this in a way that you're following maybe the court orders and you're doing things in a way that you're going to get paid at the end. Because sometimes if they just cannot make it, cannot get together, cannot figure this out, the court will order them to have a different kind of agent. So make sure you're not doing too much work before you're getting paid. But then with diamonds and diapers, these are the kind of things that are easy, fun transactions. And you want to make sure that you have a good understanding of how that is so that you can go in and have these conversations with confidence, because that's always what you want to do. People who are moving out of state. I mentioned this before, but there are a lot of people who are leaving California, whether it's because it's too expensive, the politics, job changes, whatever it may be. We have lots of people moving from California. Now, don't be concerned. Don't be too concerned about staying here if you are staying here, because there are always people coming to California too. But the people who are leaving California more than likely are going to have a property to sell, and then you're going to be able to potentially get a referral from the next agent they use in another state or wherever they're going. So keep in mind for that. So when we talk about who is making moves, we have to be in those places. We have to be in those conversations so that you're staying top of mind. And then, of course, you want to look at expired listings. Expired listings are a great way to identify people who have wanted to sell. These are people who have said, yes, I'm interested in selling. I want to sell my house. And for one reason or the other, it didn't work out with the last one. I just listed and sold an expired listing, and the agents before had it on the market for, I think, almost a year. And it was a difficult transaction, but we were able to get it to the finish line. And a lot of times that's because they've listed with somebody else. They're frustrated, they're upset. Something happened that it didn't go the way that it needed to. And now you're able to come in and have the conversation to say, hey, if you want to sell, here's the price that it's going to sell at. And maybe it was priced too high. You can put it at a more reasonable price point, because if it's priced too high, it's probably never going to sell. But if they're sick of it, if they've just been with this other agent and they don't want to do it, and now you come along, now you can have that conversation because they're already up to their eyeballs and wanting to get out of this. So expired listings are a really good way to find listings right now. Now, I will say there aren't tons of expired listings, because most of the time, because the only people selling are people who are really wanting to sell, most of the time those are selling. Even if it's a little bit longer than what it was before, they're still selling. So expired listings are a good thing to take a look at, but don't bank all of your listings. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, I should say. All right, so let's talk about setting yourself up for success.
Do you want me to save my questions till the end?
You can jump in and ask questions as we go. Go ahead.
So I'm wanting to know about the expired listings a little bit. If it was listed too high, is that generally the price is why they expire? Generally speaking?
I would say generally, yes. Not always, of course, but generally it is. A lot of times people say, oh, well, if I could sell for, $10 million, I would list it today. And then the agent takes the listing, hoping they'll be able to talk them down. And then when
Mhm.
it doesn't sell, it expires. So a
Okay.
lot of times that's what it is it's priced too high.
Okay.
Is that it?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, easy peasy. All right, so the purpose of the buyer and listing consultation, we have to understand the purpose because we want to make sure that we have a good understanding walking into this so that we can practice what it is that we need to practice and really get to the heart of it. So when we do have a buyer or a listing consultation, we're talking about a couple different things, and there are ways that a lot of times they overlap. So in both, we want to be finding out our client's motivation. That's super, super duper important. We need to understand what is their motivating factor. Do they need to move? Do they have a timeline that they need to move? Are they going out of state? Is it for a job? Are they trying to get in before their kids' school starts? What is it that they're doing? Oh, hold on just a second. I have to turn on do not disturb. Otherwise, I'll be like squirrel. So, what are they doing that is forcing them or making them want to move? Maybe it's that they want to downsize. And so they have these stairs and they just don't want to deal with stairs anymore and they want a smaller house. All their kids have gone to college, whatever it is. When you have that understanding, then when it gets hard, and yes, I do say when, not if, because in every transaction, it's going to be challenging. When it gets difficult, you're going to be able to go back to their why. Why is it that they're moving? They understand that they need something different in their lives. And so that is why we're dealing with this short-term pain right now. Number two, establish expectations. During your buyer consultation or listing consultation, you're able to establish expectations about a number of different things. Expectations of what they can expect from you, expectations of what they can expect, what you expect of them. So you can kind of explain, this is where I like to walk through and say, here is the process. You're going to, if they're listing their house, you're going to be getting your house ready. We're going to do photos on this day. We're going to have it go live on this day. If we're doing an open house, it's going to be on this day. Hopefully we'll get offers in. Once we get an offer in, it'll be under contract. And you're walking through the whole thing. A lot of what I like to do is I like to give my clients an understanding of when they're going to be spending money, because that's what lots of people care about, right? I just went through a transaction that actually just closed today, yay, that it was a divorce. Yes, thank you. It was a divorce situation. And they both were struggling financially. They needed to be done with this. They needed their money. They needed all the closings. But there were a couple times when they needed to spend money out of pocket. And if I hadn't prepared them for that, that would have been a really hard conversation to have, because they were both saying, well, I don't want to pay for this. I don't want to pay for anything. Why do I need to pay for things, et cetera, et cetera. And so we want to make sure that we have, especially when they're going to spend money, out in the open. So when it's a listing, a lot of times they're going to spend money on the HOA documents. If there's an HOA, they're going to have to spend money getting those documents, and you have to pay that up front. If they choose to do any kind of inspection, that would also be a time where they have to pay that up front. Now, a lot of times that's on the buyer to do. So that would be a conversation I have with a buyer. Buyer, it's expected that you pay for any inspections that you want to do. Typically, we do a home inspection and a pest inspection for termites. But if they're wanting any other inspections, a roof inspection, a plumbing inspection, anything like that, then they have to pay that out of pocket at the time it's given. Sometimes you can work with people and vendors who will pay at the close of escrow, but a lot of times they expect money at the time the service is rendered. Now, something else just to kind of note, I've been hearing from people in my office that they're saying, because there's a lot of transactions that are falling through. People are writing offers and then changing their minds later on. And so a lot of things are falling through. And so I heard one of the agents say, I'm going to start requiring a $3,000 non-refundable deposit. So whatever their EMD is, their initial deposit, if it's $20,000, $3,000 of that is going to be non-refundable. So whatever reason, if they pull out for any reason, the seller gets to keep $3,000. Would I do that? I haven't done that yet. What I do think is, if you're going to go that route, and if you're going to do that, number one, I don't think it's a bad thing, because you're going to get some serious buyers, because nobody's going to be saying, yes, I want to give you $3,000 and like basically carte blanche, I'm giving you $3,000. Nobody's going to do that unless they're serious. So now you're whittling out all of those buyers who are just saying, hey, throw in an offer, let's just see what happens. But you could be cutting yourself off at the foot, because at the nose, what is that? You know what I mean? You could be, shooting yourself in the foot. Is that it? Yeah. You could be doing that, because now somebody who may have made it to the finish line is saying, well, I don't want to risk that. So no, I'm not going to do that. Now, one thing that I did advise is, I said, when I heard this agent saying that, I said, I don't think that's the worst idea. But what I would say is that if you're going to require that, then the seller needs to provide an inspection. They need to provide a home inspection, a pest inspection, just the basic inspections, because now you're asking a buyer to come in, write an offer based on what they know, and give a $3,000 or however much you want non-refundable deposit. So if you're doing that, if I was doing that, I would definitely be saying, hey, I want to make sure that we are providing all of the information possible up front. Now, in some markets, like I know in Central Coast, it is very common for the seller to provide the inspections beforehand. And so if that's your market, or if you're in a similar market where it's common for that to happen, then I would definitely recommend doing that. But if you're in a market where it's not common for that to happen, you play it by ear. I sometimes do that, sometimes don't, just depending on the type of transaction it is. I will say that a couple months ago, I worked with these sellers who lived in an old house. It was probably 60, 70 years old. And they said, everything's great, everything's fine, we love it, we've lived here for all these years, we've never had any major issues, it's been great. Okay, great. Well, as I'm walking around, I could see that there was, lots of stuff that was wrong with it. Seemed like it could be basic maintenance stuff. It needs, a paint job, and it needs to be fixed. And there were some stains on the ceiling, and they said, oh no, that was from a roof issue and that got fixed, and this and that. Well, once we got the inspection to come in, when the buyers came and did the inspection, there was all kinds of stuff that was wrong. And the buyers ended up asking for a $50,000 price reduction, which the sellers agreed to. But that's the kind of thing that's like, if we had done this in the beginning, we would have known exactly where to price it, how to price it right, because we're pricing it based on what we know to be true of the property. So just a couple little things to make you think about, like, what should you be doing and how you should be doing it. But again, this consultation is where you set all of those expectations. So whether you're on the buyer or the seller side, you're explaining to them, here's when we would do an inspection first. Here's, if you're on the buyer side, hey, you can expect that you need to pay out of pocket for inspections unless they've already paid for it. And in your market, maybe that's common, maybe that's not, but that's the kind of thing that you're having this conversation. That's what you're explaining to them. And then number 3, the explanation of the market. You're telling them, here's what this market today looks like. And because of that, here's what you can expect of your transaction. So for a seller, I'm going to tell them the market today is, there's not a ton of things on the market, but the days on market are a little bit longer. And so either we can say days on market to be, 30 days, that's fine, and we price it accordingly. Or if they're wanting to go fast, this is where we go back to that motivation. If we know their motivation, we know that they want to go fast, we know that they are needing to get out of there, then we price it a little bit lower because that generates more offers. Now, I will tell you that strategy still is working today. Even in a market where things are sitting, I had the listing that I closed today. We put it on the market and we priced it a little bit low because we wanted, they're a divorce situation. So we wanted it to go fast. Plus it was around the holidays and all of that kind of weirdness. So again, all of this is explaining the market. I'm telling them we're around the holidays. So here's what you can expect. Let's price it a little bit low. And then hopefully we can get a bidding war and work them up. This house was a great house, by the way. It was built in 2018, so fairly new. And they had done a bunch of upgrades to it. It was a great property. Well, I put it to go live on a Friday, and it was crickets. And then finally on Wednesday, almost a full week later, I got one phone call for a showing. They came in, did the showing, they submitted an offer, and it was over asking price. So, and part of that is because of the strategy that I use. I don't have it go open and whatever. I use a specific strategy. So part of that is that, but part of it is just because of the nature of the negotiation that we talked about. So they ended up offering 15,000. We ended up closing 15,000 over asking, and they were the only people to do a showing. They were actually the only people to even reach out to me. The entire time it was listed, I had one person reach out, one showing, and they still offered, we closed $15,000 higher than asking. So that was good. That was definitely I was getting a little nervous when we had nobody calling, and I needed to explain to them about the market, and this is what's happening, and I was expecting this, but this is what we ended up getting, all of this kind of stuff. And then even throughout the process, there were a couple things that came up that were like, ooh, it actually closed a little bit later because there were some issues with the lender, and it was kind of like nothing we could have seen coming. It ended up getting worked out, but now I'm having to talk through to my sellers all of these issues and what's going on, and helping them to understand that, hey, there are a lot of transactions that are just more difficult. It's partially because of the holidays that we were delayed, but we were delayed a lot because we were supposed to close December 2nd, and now it's 10 days later and we closed today. So we were delayed pretty substantially, but part of it was the holidays, part of it was unforeseen circumstances, and now I'm having to have the conversation with my sellers. Now, had I not explained the market at all, had I not given them expectations, had I not, talked through their motivations, I would really not have a good idea of where to lead this conversation when I'm having to give them bad news, especially. So now that I know a little bit more about how to have these kind of conversations, we were able to smooth it over and everybody was happy in the end. So make sure that you're walking through, buyer or seller, and having these kind of conversations. You want to make sure that you're finding out that motivation, that you're establishing expectations, and that you're explaining the market. Especially when you're talking to buyers, maybe that means that they're going to have to offer a little bit higher than they were thinking, or that the asking price is. And we have to explain to them, that's not the worst thing in the world. It's okay to offer a little bit higher. That doesn't mean that you're not getting a good deal. That just means that that's how much it's going for. And we have to remind them that a house is worth whatever a buyer is willing to pay for it. So if there are a bunch of buyers that come and those buyers are bidding it up, that's what that house is worth. And we have to remind them of that. This is also a really good time to have the conversation about, can they afford to pay you your buyer's agent fee if the seller's agent is not willing to, or if the sellers are not willing to. A good conversation to have on both sides is during that listing consultation. So if they say, no, we don't have any money to pay you, or no, we expect the seller to pay for it, well, great. Then we are able to say, okay, so if it comes up and we submit the offer, we can still ask for the seller to pay for it. But if they come back and they say, no, we can't pay for it, we're not willing to pay for it, whatever, you're establishing upfront what's going to happen. And you're going to have that conversation with them. They can say, nope, we're going to walk, or they're going to say, maybe we'll talk about it then, or whatever it is. Same thing with the listing side. If you're saying, okay, it's recommended that we offer at least some kind of percentage to the buyer side, 2.5%, 3%. The conversation that I keep having with my sellers is I just let them know, whatever the buyers are going to offer, we're going to look at every single offer that comes in and look at the net amount. We're going to look at what's actually going to be put in your pocket, because that's what matters at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what they ask for, what concessions they ask for, or anything like that. What matters is what's going to be put in your pocket at the end of the day. Because if they ask for, $20,000 in concession, but they're not asking for their buyer's agent fee to be covered, well, maybe it comes out in the wash for you. But if they're asking for $20,000 concession and for the buyer's agent fee to be covered, well, now that's an additional amount. And if you hadn't had that conversation with your sellers, then that's kind of coming out of the blue for them. So we want to make sure to have really good, confident, comfortable conversations with our sellers and buyers. All right, so let's talk about some of our stats. 80% of sellers use the first agent they meet with. Now, this might be different for working with buyers, but similarly, when you're working with buyers, it's all about that FaceTime. So even if you meet somebody online, let's say you did a Facebook ad and they're trying to say, oh, I want to see this house. Even if you go and see that house, be sure that you bring some of those forms that's just saying that you're showing them one house or two houses or however many houses, if they don't want to sign the full BRBC, because you still need a signature saying that they're agreeing to this. But you want to make sure that you're meeting with them. You want to make sure that you're going and you're talking to them. Whether that's a buyer consultation, you're showing them a home, a listing consultation, you want to be one of the very first agents they meet with, because we know 80% of sellers go with the first agent they meet with. And 58% of sellers spend less than 3 hours researching. I would say this is probably similar to buyers, although I don't have the stats for that. But for buyers, a lot of times they go on Zillow, go and find the property. They're looking for properties. They're not looking for agents. A lot of times they figure the agent will come. Different with sellers is that they are looking for the agent. They're looking for somebody to put their home on the market and bring as many buyers as they can. So you want to make sure that you are where these buyers and sellers are. You want to be the very first person who is there, because they're not spending a ton of time researching. They're spending less than 3 hours. For a $500,000, $1 million, $2 million transaction, that's kind of crazy. So you want to make sure that you are that person who is their go-to. You want to be top of mind. All right, let's talk about getting that appointment. So once you have the appointment, we want to make sure that we're establishing rapport. So especially if you don't know them, you want to make sure that you're coming in and helping them to understand that you're a professional. But even if you do know them, what you want to do is you want to make sure that they know you're not just like the friend they're using. You're not just like some random person who is saying, hey, please, please, I want to list your house or I want to help you buy. You need to establish rapport, and part of that is coming as a professional. You are a professional, you are the expert, and it's your job to show them that. So you're establishing that in the beginning. Now, of course, real estate is all about relationships. And so you want to make sure that you are, I don't want to say mirroring, but you're talking in the way that these people want to be talked to. So when you're talking to somebody who's a high D like me, a driver who's like, let's get it, what is the bottom line? Just tell me the bottom line. Then you need to adapt and you need to say, great, let's get to the bottom line. If you're talking to somebody who is wanting all the details and all the nooks and crannies, you better be comfortable enough to show them every single little detail. So it's really important for you to understand not just the contracts, not just the process, but you need to understand relationships. You need to understand psychology. You need to understand how to talk to people and how to actually get it how to have those conversations so that they trust you, because that's exactly what you're doing. You're establishing that rapport. Then you want to connect them with a lender if they're on the buy side. We want to make sure that they're using our preferred lender. So even if they come with a lender that they've already been approved with, that's great. Usually what I want to do is I still want to say, hey, just go through the pre-approval process with my preferred lender. And then if it ends up that, like you still want to go with them, of course, no problem. There's absolutely no obligation. But there are a couple of things that does when you have them approved with your lender. Number one, it's always easier to work with a lender that you know personally and that you've worked with before, because you know how they work, you know their business, you know that they can close. But it also makes it so that you know that this person legitimately does have the funds and the ability to buy. Because sometimes when you go through Rocket Mortgage or, like some of these other random kind of places, they're not doing the vetting that you need to be done. They're not actually going through and looking at all of their income and all of their taxes and all of that kind of stuff. They're just giving them a verbal, yes, sure, based on what you've said, you're pre-approved. So we want to make sure that we're actually going through the process. So regardless of whether or not they have a lender, we want to connect them to that lender. Number three, we want to schedule that consultation. So this is kind of the order that we're doing it in. We're establishing rapport, connecting them with the lender, scheduling the consultation. So establishing rapport a lot of times is over the phone. But again, if you're meeting them for the first time, if you're meeting them at a property, that's part of the establishing rapport. But you also still want to always have that consultation. Even if it's over Zoom, if it's at a Starbucks, if it's at your office, wherever it is, you want to make sure that you're having that consultation, because part of that is helping them to understand that you are the professional that you say you are. So you have to make sure that you are having those consultations, that you are talking with them, that you are explaining the process and all of that kind of stuff. So you definitely still, even if you meet with them and show them houses first, you still want to have that consultation. And it might look a little different. If you're like, okay, we already submitted an offer on this property because they saw one and they said, yep, I like it, this is what I want. I still want to be explaining the whole process through. And then, of course, we are becoming their trusted advisor for all things real estate. So we want to make sure that, all of this is leading to the end goal of being their trusted advisor, so that it's not just one and done. Your goal is to build a relationship for life. You want to make sure that you're following up with them every year and continuing on to have those conversations, because you want to make sure that when they have a real estate conversation, question, transaction, you want to make sure that you're the person who they're using and that you're top of mind. Okay, so pre-listing questionnaires. We have these for buyers, sellers, everything like this. And why I always bring this up is because a lot of times people think that this is a consultation. This is not a consultation. All this is you asking questions and getting information for you to be able to help them on their next step. So it's important that you have this information. This is part of figuring out the motivation, but this is not the consultation. I always tell people this is like going into the doctor's office, filling out all their forms, handing it into the receptionist, and then them saying, okay, great, we'll see you next year. Well, what? I didn't get any help. I didn't talk to the doctor. I didn't get any information. All I'm doing is giving you my information. And that's what this is. When we're asking, where are you moving? What's motivating you to move there? How soon do you have to be there? All of these are questions that help us identify how to help them, but we need to take it a step further and do the actual consultation. So be sure that you have something like this that you are able to talk to them through and talk to them about. Now, I will say, like for me, I don't use something like this anymore because now it's just in my head. I know the script, but I do have something like this that I could send to them if I needed to, and then they fill out those questions. But most of the time I'm having this conversationally. This is something that I'm talking about. Oh, where are you moving to? Oh, that's so fun. That sounds awesome. Do you have an agent out there? Are you buying a house? What are you doing? Oh, okay, so let's talk about this house you own. What's the timeline that you're wanting to get out there? Okay, do you know how much you owe on this property? It's very conversational. I'm not sitting there with a checklist. Not that that is a bad thing. Taking notes is a great thing because, again, you're establishing yourself as a professional. It just depends on what your style is and how comfortable you are. If you're more comfortable with something that you're writing out, absolutely do that, because the key is being comfortable and confident. All right, so when we talk about establishing a price, we're just going to talk briefly about this because I want to make sure that we jump into command. When we talk about establishing the price, we want to factor in a couple of things. So one of the things that we always need to talk about is we want to check to see what the buyers have been rejecting. And what I mean by that is basically going onto your MLS and you're finding out what is active and what has been active for a long time. Because if it's been active for a long time, that tells us that the buyers are rejecting it. For one reason or another, the buyers are saying, no, I don't want it. I don't want it at that price. I don't want it because of the pictures. I don't want it because of the listing description. I don't want it because of the HOA. Whatever it is, the buyers are rejecting it. So you want to go on and your job is to look to see what is currently active, because that, unless anything that has been active for over, I would say about 2 weeks in this market, there's something going on with it. Is it not priced right? And obviously this is different depending on the markets, because some markets, the average is 30 days before it goes under, something like that. So if you're in a market like that, then you wait to see, okay, show me what has been listed for at least 30 days, 14 days, 60 days, whatever it is. And anything that you see there, that is what the buyers are rejecting. So when you're figuring out the price, you want to make sure that you're looking at that. If your seller is saying, I want to price my property at 1.5, but everything that is similar to their house is listed at 1.2 or lower, or things are listed at 1.5, but they're just sitting for a long time, now you have information to go and talk to them. And because you have their motivation, because you know what they're doing, you can say, listen, I know that you want to get out of here. I know that you don't want to be paying this mortgage anymore. Know that you want to be done with this. And so if you want it to be done, we need to list it lower. We need to list it at this price. But you have examples of why that is. The reasoning behind it is really, really important, especially going back to what we said about who are you talking to? If it's somebody who needs the details, if it's somebody who needs more information, you have to give them that information. You have to be prepared with that. So check what the buyers have been rejecting. Price low to sell fast. This is always a strategy in every market that it's going to work for you. And oftentimes what I tell my sellers is, even if you don't necessarily need to sell it fast, pricing it low will still get you likely a higher dollar amount. It'll get you people who are going to be bidding themselves up. And in some situations, like in the one that I just had, they're not even going to be bidding against other people. They're just going to be bidding against themselves and go higher and higher. And so that's what we're looking for. We want to make sure that we're pricing it low enough that they are going to be chomping at the bit to get there. Now, you don't want to price it too low so that people think something's wrong with it. You want to price it right. So let me just give an example. If everything in the area is selling for $1 million, I would put it at $990 or $989.99. Just low enough that people are like, oh, let me look into that one because it's cheaper than everything else, but they're going to probably bid it up. And if everything is selling at $1 million, I would not be surprised to see it selling at $1,020,000 or $1,050,000 because they're bidding it up and bidding it up. So that's what you want to be looking at. You want to see what have the buyers been rejecting and what is the price point that things are selling, and price it just below that. So what we're not going to do today is I'm not going to dive into the MLS, because remember, all of our MLSs are different. I do use Cloud CMA and I love it. And specifically, it's because it makes doing the CMAs very easy. And I like the way that it looks in the end. I feel like it's cohesive and it's clean and it's professional looking. And so I like that. But you also need to go into your MLS and you need to look and see, okay, what are what is currently on the market, what's active in not just the small area, not just the small neighborhood of your listing, but everything in the city. What is everything looking like? Because chances are buyers are not just looking at one tiny neighborhood. Chances are buyers are looking at a whole city, sometimes even a whole county. So you want to make sure you have a good idea for what houses of that type are selling for. All right, so we need to make sure that we're getting things signed. We have to make sure that we're doing the RLA, of course, which was always something that we were always getting signed, the listing agreement, but now we're adding on to that the BRBC. And this is not new. We've had this now for 6 months. But we just have to make sure that we have it down pat.
Brittany,
Did you
I
have a
want to,
question, Pam?
yeah, I did. So real quick before we go into the forms, do you have an actual like presentation you use like on a PowerPoint, or do you, I have seen booklets and bound things, and I'm struggling with that one right now. I have like 7 pages and I've laminated them and that's what I'm using. But I just was wondering, like, I know you've done a lot of them. So what do you do?
I kind of do a combo. So what I do is I have kind of like a PowerPoint type thing that I go through on my computer. I go through it with them.
Uh-huh.
But I also print out a few of the key pieces. And part of what I'm printing out is actually the RLA document or the BRBC or whatever, or the RPA. And I'm printing out just the grid component because I'm wanting to walk through that and talk through that with them so that they understand what they're signing. So I only print out a couple of things. Like if I'm going on a listing appointment, I'm going to print out the CMA. So all of the comps and all of that, I print those out. And then I'm going to print out whatever the form is that we're going to be using. So an RLA. And then when I'm on a buyer consultation, I do the same kind of thing where I print out, usually I'll print out like part of the MLS things that I'm showing them. And then I'll print out like part of the document that they're going to be signing. And then I go through on my computer the actual presentation. So, and then there are some pieces of the presentation that I have printed out that are just like key pieces for them to know because I do go through the process and I want them to know all of that kind of stuff. So I do kind of a combination of both. But
Thanks.
it really is whatever you want to do, whatever is makes you most confident and comfortable. I know that I even still use my presentation as like a script for myself and as like a guide. So I'm not reading off of it, but I am using it to like jog my memory and remind me of things that I'm wanting to say and how to explain it and all of that kind of stuff. So it's really important to have something, whether it's printed out or online. And it really is just what you're most comfortable with. Okay, so key factors of the RLA and BRBC. You want to set a minimum price in your head. This is in your head. We're talking about compensation. So it is important that we are compensated. And with this new change that we are now negotiating compensation, buyer side is negotiating compensation when they're submitting an RPA. Agents were so fearful of like, now I'm not going to get paid, but that's not the case. You're still going to get paid. It's just deciding who's going to pay it, the seller side or the buyer side. Now, what we know is that in the 6 months this has happened, at least in my area, the sellers 99.9% of the time are still paying that buyer side compensation. However, you still have to have this conversation with your buyers. You still have to let them know. And when we're talking about this, we have to set a minimum price in our head. We need to know that whether your minimum price is 3%, 2.5%, 2%, 4%, whatever your minimum is, you need to set that and you need to have that. And you need to say, okay, I'm going to negotiate, but not past this certain point. Because there are so many things that you have to pay with your compensation that you need to put food on the table for your family too, right? We have expenses that we need to pay. We have our splits that we have MLS dues that we're paying. There's still a lot of things that we're paying because this is our business. So don't think in your head, oh my gosh, we get paid so much, and so it's fine for me to cut my commission when you're going into it. If you want to cut your commission at some point, okay, that's on you, but don't go into it thinking I'm going to cut my commission. I know I've talked to you guys a lot about, I have a menu of services where I say, if you want this, it's going to be this price. This is going to be X plus, this is going to be X plus plus. And what's nice about that is that if somebody is looking for a discount, then I can say, here's what I can do. I can give you this higher level service for the lower level price. And those are the kind of discounts that I give. So I still have a minimum that I'm charging, but I can change the services that I offer within that. And it definitely helps when I'm working with like friends or friends and family, because I'm still getting paid the same amount, but I'm offering them a higher level service, or, you know, whatever it might be. I can negotiate in that way. But we have to learn to negotiate. You have to get good at this, because if you're not good at negotiating, you're going to talk yourself down more than anybody else is going to talk your prices down. Even people, we know this, even people who don't really expect a price cut, they negotiate because they don't want to pay full price, period, end of story, for anything. They're always going to ask. And a lot of times, I would say 90% of the time, if you say no, they say, oh, I just had to ask. And so you really need to get comfortable with saying, no, I'm not going to reduce my price, but here's what I can do. I'm not able to do that, but this is what I can do. Let's work this out. Let's see how we can do this. I don't want you to lose a sale, but I also want to make sure that you are getting what you deserve. All right, let's jump into commanding your consultation. So we're creating a buyer and a listing presentation, and we're going to talk just a little bit about the checklists. I know I always talk about checklists, and we very rarely have time to get to them. So we are going to jump into command. Okay, so what we're doing here is I'm going to run through this super fast because we've done this before, and I have lots of videos on this. So you can find them on my YouTube channel if it's too fast for you. But what we want to do is we want to go to this designs, this little paintbrush with a canvas. And we're going to go over here to create design. And we're going to say print. A lot of times it's just in like a PDF format. So that's what we're going with. It's in print. So even if you're not planning on printing it out, we're still going to say that we want to print it. We have a couple of things here, and you can see this auto create actually is really cool if you have something that you're going to use. Okay, we got it. If you have something that you're going to use, you can do this auto create, and it just pulls the information from your listing. So that's kind of nice if you wanted to do that. That's just a little pro tip. But what we're going to do is we're going to go to listings, and you have here a listing presentation. Also, if you go to buyer, it has buyer presentation. We're not going to do both. I just want to point out to you that it does have both of these, but the idea is the same. So we're going to click on listing presentation because, of course, we want you to focus on your listings. And from this, we're just pulling up whatever template, whatever basic template that you want. So we're going to use this one, and we are just going to run through this. So easy peasy stuff to do. I didn't show you, but first and foremost, you want to add in where it says My Assets. On the front page, there's a page that says My Assets, and you want to add that in, because when I click on this, you can see it has like my information. If I go to logos, under My Assets, it has my logos and my market centers and all of that. So you want to make sure that you create your assets under My Assets first and foremost. So now we're going to pull up pages off to the side. You just click on the bottom right, and you can see that there are 29 pages. And Pam, I heard you say you have 7 pages. That is right about the sweet spot. I always say don't go more than like 10 pages, because nobody wants to sit through you doing 10 pages of stuff. But a lot of this, what you'll see is just the same thing, but it looks a little different. So you have here, this is a title page, and also this page is a title page. So you just pick the one that you like the best, and you delete the rest. So we're going to delete this one up top. Just click on the 3 buttons and then say delete. Yes, we want to delete it. The next page here is instructions. We don't need that. So we're just going to say delete it. Yes, delete it. Okay, that one deleted. Maybe I need to be clicked on it. Anyway, you get the idea. We don't need to delete all this. Yes, delete. So I don't know why that one does not want to delete. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to click on some of this stuff to put our information in. So obviously that is not a picture of me, and I want it to be a picture of me. So I just click on it. Then when I hover over here, you have this swap button. So I'm just going to press the swap button, and it's going to swap it out and change it into the formatting that we want it to be. So you can see this picture. If we click on it, it's actually like a normal size picture, but because of the formatting, it is more narrow. So if we, okay, let me say done. Let me go into the, images. If I go into workspace, all of these images are actually licensed to Keller Williams. So you can use any of this stuff. You don't have to worry about copyright or anything like that. So if we wanted to click on this, and if we wanted like a Christmassy thing, which actually I don't recommend, I'm just doing this because it's Christmas time, but you don't want to do this because because what we want to do is create something that is static and we have it forever, and you can laminate it like you're saying. And so we don't want it to be like holiday themed or Christmas themed or whatever, but I'm going to do it for funsies. Then I can double click on it. I can adjust it. I can say done. Then of course we want to change all of this stuff out because I don't want it to be specific to certain clients. So I do want to take this out, and maybe I want to change this to say listing presentation. So I'm going to click on it. I'm going to go to this typewriter over here, and then I'm going to say listing. And then on the next line, I'm going to say presentation, and you can type it in here without opening up the typewriter, but sometimes it's easier especially if you have something long to write in or whatever. Now we're just changing our name and information, putting that in. If I click on this, you can see it automatically goes to my logo, so I can swap that out, and it's in, and we're done. If I want to add in my personal logo, I can add that here, and we can keep on rolling. So when we are going and looking through this, what I want to do is I want to take anything that is like very custom out of this. So this page is a custom page. It's talking about their property. I want to get it out. I'm not going to use that. So I would delete this. Yes, delete it. So you can go through and you can delete all of this kind of stuff. This is another page that's also specific to their neighborhood. I don't want that in there. Comps, I'm not going to do that because I'm going to print them separately. So I'm not going to put them on this document. So I'm going to delete that. Then we're starting to get into your needs come first. So really what we want to have is like one page per whatever thing we're talking about. So this is talking about your needs come first. Some of these questions are saying, what's the one thing that has to happen to make your dream scenario a reality? If you could add just one more thing to this process that could make it even better, blah, 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 that kind of thing. So you can leave this type of document like this, or if you go to the next one, this talks about the process. And so you can talk through, here's the process of what we're doing. You can keep all this, you can delete some of it, however you want to do it. But what I would say is keep something about the process, because that's where you're establishing those expectations. Make sure that you know that they know what the process is. Make sure that you have some kind of page that is telling you their motivation. So you've already had the conversation where you're saying, why are you moving? Where are you moving? How soon do you need to be there? All that kind of thing. But in your document, you can say, hey, is there anything else that we haven't talked about? I know we've already talked about you want 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a pool with a view, whatever. Is there anything else that you haven't told me? And then that's more of the expectation conversation. All right, so if we keep moving down here, your app, you can take that out if you want. Then we start getting into the custom marketing plan. Here's some information about it. Where most people find their buyers is on the internet. So I actually find this to be kind of a helpful little graphic. So I do usually leave this one in. And then promotional assets. Again, this is one that I would only do one page of. So this one, this next one has a media plan. I actually like this page because it talks about property brochure, just listed all the stuff that they're going to get that you're going to do. You just have to make sure if you're giving this to them, you actually are doing what you're saying you're going to do in this. And then strategic promotion, a lot of this is just similar to what it had up here. So I'm going to delete the pages that you don't need. If it's saying the same thing, open house strategy, this is all marketing. So I'm not going to be putting it in here. You can go through this and see what it is that you want to keep and what resonates with you. And this page then talks about you and your numbers. You can use your market centers numbers if you don't like this, or if you don't really have any numbers, take this page out. You don't need to have this. One page that I would recommend you keep in is one of these pages, a portfolio of excellence. So it's either, again, from your sales or your market centers. So past sales, this is the same thing. So you could do one of these pages. And then also, this page is a testimonial page. Anytime you have reviews or anything like that, save the best of them for this kind of review page, because this is what is going to be very helpful for them to see what your past clients are saying about you. So then we get into the selling safely. Again, this kind of stuff you don't need to have, the bottom line, and then a contact you page. So as soon as you update the personal information, a lot of the other stuff on here is just plug and play. You don't have to do very much updating. It's really only that first page and the last page, and then you need to delete all the pages in between that you don't want. So it makes it pretty easy. Then you just go to download it or print it, whatever you want to do. What I usually do is I'll send a copy of this after I meet with them. So after the listing presentation or the buyer presentation, I'll send a copy so that they can look through it. What I notice is that people who are like the hard drivers who are like, just give me the bottom line, they're never going to look at this again. But the people who are more detail oriented may look at this again to say, what is the process again? Let me make sure I have that. And then depending on who I'm meeting with, that page is something I might print out. That page of the process is something that I might print out. So something to just keep in mind is that you just want to cater to whoever you're talking to. All right. So lastly, we're already over time. I just want to show you where the checklists are going to be, because I know we've talked about these before. Let's go to opportunities. Once we're in opportunities, we have, if I click on this one, you can see that I have a checklist. This one is 7 out of 8. If I move it to the next area, it's 0 out of 5. So if I click on it, you can see I have all these check marks on here. There's all kinds of stuff that we have. So one thing, I'm going to move it back there so I don't forget. When you go in here, yours are going to say 0 out of 0 because you have to add them all in. The way to add them all in is to go to your stages and checklists. And we have here the different stage names. So you have during the marketing and showing, you can add in all of these things. The photography was ordered, your sign was put out, you got the keys, did the lockbox, added the MLS. And if you need to add more, you just add more tasks. Now this is going to be for your template. So every single listing you have has this exact same template. And then when you go into each specific listing, like I just did here, when you go in here, that's where you can add or change these specific things. So if I say, oh no, we don't need this, I can archive it or I can edit it. I can add more in here. I can add a task here. I can do all kinds of things that I want to do. And then this is going to show up. If I add a due date, it's going to show up on my task list on my homepage. So this is a really, really key thing to do. You have to do the checklist. Now, this is one of those things where it's like you do the checklist once and then it saves you hours and hours on the back end. And so I highly recommend that you do the checklists. But unfortunately, it's not something that I can just like share with you and you can have it on your own command. I wish it was like that. And I have submitted those ideas, but unfortunately right now it's not. All right, so what is important now? How do we win? So of course we need to practice. Make sure that you are not practicing on your clients. Do your role plays, know your talk tracks, know what you're talking about, especially when it comes to negotiations. We want to make sure that with negotiating, we are very comfortable talking about our compensation and how we are going to get compensated. So make sure that you're practicing not on your clients. Practice, practice, practice. Pull sample CMAs for every house in your neighborhood. You want to make sure pricing the home is more of an art than a science, so you want to get pretty good at it. Pull up those CMAs, pull up the houses that have been on the market for a long time. Pull up, run a CMA on that, run their comps, and see how much you would list it for. And then keep track of that and see what it actually sells for and see how close you are. Practice, practice, practice. Create a buyer and listing presentation today and review it in the mirror or with a friend. Make sure that you're creating those buyer consultations and listing consultations, and don't just come here and say, oh, I'm going to have one. Oh, it's a good idea to do it. Get on Command, get on Canva, get on Etsy, and get a listing presentation. You don't have to use commands. You can use whatever you want to use, but you want to make sure that you have a listing and a buyer's presentation. And then now here we are for the bonus. Thanks for hanging with me. The MREA book, it's a great book. It's a great resource just to see how other people are doing it. This is a Millionaire Real Estate Agent book by Gary Keller. And it's a great playbook to just see what are people doing who are doing this at the highest level and what part of their business can I incorporate into my business. Number 2, command checklists. I really do use this. I use this for every single transaction that I have because I think that it is that good. And I think it's something that people sleep on all the time with command. Cloud CMA. I just was talking with another agent the other day, or maybe a week or two ago, in my office, who was asking me, what do you use for pulling comps? And I said, Cloud CMA. And she's like, oh, do you? Okay, I'm going to try it. I'm telling you, you might need a few times to work out the kinks, but get on it, feel comfortable with it, because after that, once you have like your template, it makes it so much easier. It makes pulling CMAs like a 5-minute process instead of an hour-long process. And then finally, the last one is The Full Fee Agent by Chris Voss and Steve Schull. We've talked about this before, but this is a really good book that talks about negotiating and really coming to understand what you're worth and your value. So this is a great book. And another one that I didn't put on here, but I literally use every day, is Canva. Canva is super quick and easy to use. I use it to create my postcards, and then I send them out through Command. I use them to create different pages and different parts of my buyers and sellers consultations. Canva is definitely where to go for that kind of thing. Remember, we are not meeting for the next, oh no, we are meeting, and our next meeting is going to be New Year, New Success, creating your action plan. So hopefully you have your next year, your business plan set, you're all ready to go. Now we're going to create that action plan. So make sure to join me for that Thursday at 2 p.m. And then we're off for 2 weeks. And then in the beginning of the year, we will be here on Tuesdays at 2:30. So make sure you join me for that. If you need me, you have my email. Subscribe on YouTube. Don't forget, we're here every Thursday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Join me live by registering at the link in the description below and get your questions answered in real time. I love helping you succeed. Thanks for joining me for another Build Your Business with Brittany. Let's keep building, growing, and closing those deals. I'll see you next Thursday at 2 p.m.